at the absolute height of his fame, one of Hollywood's most celebrated actors walked into a bar, not as a punchline, but as the beginning of a love story that genuinely surprised the world. He wasn't looking for headlines, he wasn't chasing a co-star or a model from the pages of a magazine. He found something far less expected, and perhaps far more real. Most people assumed a man like Matt Damon would follow the familiar Hollywood script, high-profile romance, tabloid romance, the kind of relationship that lives and dies in the gossip columns. Instead, he fell for a woman most people had never heard of, a bartender, an immigrant, a single mother from Argentina, living a quietly ordinary life in Miami. And today, decades later, the question that keeps resurfacing is surprisingly simple. Who exactly is she? And where does she stand now? To understand why this story captured so much attention, you have to understand where Matt Damon was standing at the time. By the early 2000s, Damon had already cemented himself as one of the most respected and bankable actors in Hollywood. His trajectory had been nothing short of remarkable. He co-wrote and starred in Good Will Hunting alongside his childhood friend Ben Affleck, earning an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay at just 27 years old. That single moment launched him from relative obscurity into the center of American pop culture. What followed was a decade of sustained serious success. The Bourne Identity turned him into an action star. Ocean's 11 placed him alongside the biggest names in the industry. He was thoughtful in interviews, self-deprecating in his humor, and consistently praised by directors and co-stars alike. He was by nearly every measure one of the most likable men in Hollywood. And precisely because of that, his personal life attracted genuine public curiosity. Fans wanted to know who would end up beside him. The media tracked his romantic history closely. Every sighting, every rumor carried weight. He had dated actress Minnie Driver, and that relationship had ended publicly, and somewhat awkwardly. By the time he was in his early 30s, people were paying close attention to who would finally win his heart for good. Nobody predicted. It would happen in a bar in Miami. It was the summer of 2003. Matt Damon was filming Stuck on You in Miami, Florida. By most accounts, it was an ordinary evening when he walked into a local bar called Purdy Lounge. No cameras, no red carpet, no carefully managed introduction. Behind the bar was Luciana Barroso. She was Argentine-born, warm-grounded, and entirely outside the Hollywood ecosystem. She had emigrated to the United States and was working as a bartender while raising her young daughter, Alexia, as a single mother. She was not pursuing celebrity. She was not networking her way through the entertainment industry. She was simply living her life. What happened between them that night, by their own later accounts, was immediate and genuine. There was a connection that neither of them had manufactured or planned. Damon has spoken about it in interviews with a kind of quiet disbelief, as though he still finds it remarkable that the most important meeting of his life happened so casually. For Luciana, the situation was complicated in ways it wouldn't have been for someone already accustomed to Hollywood culture. She was a private person, a mother, someone with roots in a completely different world. The contrast between her life and his could not have been more pronounced, and yet they stayed together, quietly, seriously, without much fanfare. When news of the relationship began to surface, the reaction was a mixture of genuine surprise and intense scrutiny. Some media coverage leaned on the Cinderella framing almost immediately. Here was an Oscar-winning movie star and one of the most eligible men in Hollywood, and he had chosen a woman who was by every conventional celebrity standard an outsider. She wasn't a model. She wasn't an actress. She didn't have a publicist or an Instagram following. Tabloids ran stories trying to piece together who she was. There was a specific fascination with the fact that she was Argentine, a working-class immigrant, and a single mother. Some coverage was respectful and curious. Some of it felt invasive, as though the press needed to make sense of a choice that didn't fit the expected Hollywood narrative. Fans, for the most part, responded warmly. Damon's likability extended to the way people received his relationship. Many viewers found the story genuinely romantic, not the manufactured romance of two celebrities orbiting the same industry, but something that felt accidental and therefore more believable. There were, of course, those who questioned whether it would last. That skepticism, largely rooted in the well-documented fragility of Hollywood marriages, was understandable. But it would turn out to be wrong. Matt Damon and Luciana Barroso were married on the 9th of December 2005 in a small private ceremony in New York City. There was no elaborate celebrity wedding. There were no exclusive magazine deals or red carpet moments tied to the occasion. It was deliberately understated, which said something about both of them. In the years that followed, the couple built a family together. Damon legally adopted Luciana's daughter, Alexia, making her his own in every formal and emotional sense. Together, they went on to have 3 more daughters: Isabella, born in 2006, Gia Zavala, born in 2008, and Stella Zavala, born in 2010. 4 daughters, a blended family, and a life that was conspicuously removed from the center of Hollywood spectacle. They moved between homes, spending time in Los Angeles, New York, and at various points in their lives. In other parts of the world, Damon has spoken publicly about the ways fatherhood reshaped his priorities, and Luciana has been identified by those close to them as a grounding, stabilizing presence in his life. What made this chapter of their story notable was not its drama, but its steadiness. In an industry where relationships are often treated as temporary arrangements, theirs looked from the outside, and by all available evidence, like a real partnership. No long-term relationship exists in a vacuum, and the Damons were not entirely insulated from outside pressure or public curiosity. There were periods where the tabloid cycle picked up speculation, as it does with any high-profile figure. Damon's frequent filming locations around the world, combined with Luciana's consistent absence from the public spotlight, occasionally fueled idle rumor. None of it was ever substantiated, and neither Damon nor Luciana chose to dignify most of it with a response. One moment that did briefly place their dynamic in public conversation came during the cultural reckoning of the Me Too movement in 2017 and 2018. Damon made several public statements about that movement that were widely criticized as tone-deaf and dismissive. The backlash was significant. His public image took a real hit, and commentators across the spectrum weighed in. Luciana was not directly involved in that controversy, but it placed Damon under a level of cultural scrutiny he had largely avoided throughout his career. He later acknowledged that some of his comments had been poorly considered. The episode was a reminder that even the most carefully maintained reputations are not immune to the shifting standards of public accountability. Through all of it, their marriage remained intact and private. Today, Luciana Barroso Damon lives what can only be described as a deliberately private life. She does not maintain an active public profile. She is not pursuing an entertainment career. She does not seek media attention, and by all evidence, she actively avoids it. She appears occasionally at major events alongside Damon, film premieres, award ceremonies, charity functions, where she is often described by observers as poised, warm, and entirely comfortable without the spotlight focused on her. Those who have met her in professional contexts tend to describe her in remarkably consistent terms: grounded, direct, and genuinely disinterested in celebrity culture. The couple is still together. As of the most recent available information, Matt Damon and Luciana Barroso have been married for nearly 2 decades. Their 4 daughters are growing up largely outside the public eye, which appears to be a conscious and mutual decision. Luciana has not written a memoir. She does not give interviews. She is not a brand ambassador or a social media personality. She is, in the most literal sense, the thing she has always been: a private individual who happened to fall in love with one of the most recognizable men in the world and who chose, at every subsequent turn, to remain herself. There is something quietly compelling about this story that resists the usual celebrity narrative. We live in a culture that tends to treat fame as contagious, the assumption being that proximity to a star eventually transforms everyone in their orbit. Luciana Barroso seems to have rejected that assumption entirely, and in doing so, may have given her husband something that his career, for all its rewards, could never provide: a life that exists entirely on its own terms. Whether that kind of steadiness is what sustains a marriage, or simply what results from one, it is difficult to say. But nearly 20 years in, the evidence suggests that Matt Damon's most important decision had nothing to do with a script, a role, or a director's vision. It happened in a bar in Miami on an unremarkable summer evening with a woman who had no interest in being a celebrity. What does it say about Hollywood that a story this ordinary feels this surprising? And do you think more celebrities would be happier if they looked outside their world, the way Matt Damon did, when choosing who to share their life with? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.